You are not criminals and you are not failures. You are the future of Burkina Faso. These were the words of Ibrahim Traoré as he welcomed deported citizens at the airport. But are these words just a promise or the beginning of a national transformation unlike any other? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. Imagine this. You're loaded onto a plane with your hands and feet shackled, a guard seated beside you as if you're a dangerous criminal. But your crime? Overstaying a visa, failing to meet paperwork deadlines, or simply losing status in a country that no longer wants you. For many deported citizens, this is their reality. The chains dig into wrists, the discomfort a constant reminder of their perceived failure. For some, this is the only way they have ever traveled. It's not a journey home, but an expulsion, accompanied by humiliation. And the place they're being sent to? Often as foreign to them as the country now rejecting them. The physical chains are bad enough, but the emotional burden is worse. Many of these individuals left their birth country decades ago, some as children too young to remember the details of the world they're now expected to reintegrate into. For those who spent their formative years in the United States, for example, their outlooks, accents, habits, and even body language set them apart. Yet as the airplane touches down, the reality hits them. This is no longer an abstract threat or a looming fear. They are here, thrust into an uncertain future, with nothing but the clothes they're wearing and a fractured sense of identity. But the ordeal doesn't end there. The society receiving them often delivers the harshest blows. Deportees carry a stigma in their home countries, a mixture of fear, pity, and judgment. In many cultures, being sent back is seen as a mark of failure, a signal that they couldn't make it in the land of opportunity. Neighbors gossip, distant relatives express disappointment. Jobs are hard to come by not only because of limited resources in these underserved nations, but because deportees are often labeled as untrustworthy or disconnected from local realities. Many return to lands that expect them to figure it out, while quietly excluding them from the fold. Take that first moment after exiting the plane. Steps are tentative, eyes glance nervously at border officials who neither welcome them warmly nor offer much clarity about what's next. For some, there isn't even anyone to greet them. No hand to shake, no familiar face in a distant crowd. That sickening mix of relief at having survived the journey and dread for what's to come washes over them. Then there's the stark contrast. Others traveling through the airport seem at ease, chatting with family members or handling daily routines as you try to process that this is now your life. According to studies about deportation's long-term effects, this psychological shock can leave scars. Deportees often face financial insecurity with no connections for work or stable housing. Their cultural detachment, combined with local disdain, deepens the alienation. Many feel like visitors in their birth country, unable to fit in, but also with nowhere else to go. Even with skills learned abroad, undocumented status in their host countries often meant working in low-paying, unstable jobs. Now they face an impossible uphill climb, rebuilding a life with practically no resources or social support. Yet when Ibrahim Traoré greeted one group of these citizens on the tarmac, everything shifted. While some leaders might meet quietly behind closed doors or avoid addressing such situations altogether, Traoré stood before them, hands open, his message clear. You are not failures. In his words, these were not individuals to pity or condemn. They were human beings worthy of dignity, individuals capable of starting fresh. His public stance was a jarring departure from the norm, an open challenge to the stigma that clung to and shadowed them. But words alone wouldn't be enough. Traoré's words seemed to do more than comfort. They carried an unspoken promise. He didn't just see their struggle, he saw their potential. For him, this homecoming wasn't the end, but an opportunity. He envisioned not just reintegration, but something far greater: empowerment, transformation. This arrival, so heavy with sadness, could mark the opening of an entirely new chapter, not just for the individuals returning, but for the nation receiving them as well. The boldness of Traore's approach raised one question: could deportation evolve into an opportunity? Instead of ending these individual stories, what if this was the prologue of something far greater? Because as it turns out, Ibrahim Traoré had a plan, and it would shock even the most skeptical onlookers. What if being sent away in chains wasn't the end of your story, but the moment you were handed the tools to redefine it? That's exactly what Ibrahim Traoré promised when he launched the Future Builders program. The initiative wasn't just about welcoming deported citizens back to Burkina Faso. It was about transforming them into architects of the nation's future. For many, Traoré's vision was revolutionary, a bold idea to take a painful reality, like deportation, and use it to spark national growth. But as powerful as his words were, they were only the first step. Skepticism wasn't in short supply. Leaders around the world often make grand promises, especially about national development, but few follow through. Many Burkinabe citizens, watching Traoré address the deportees on the Tarmac, wondered if this would be any different. Could people sent back in shackles actually contribute to building the nation? Or was this just another well-crafted speech that would fade into empty promises? For the individuals stepping off those planes, still carrying the weight of stigmatization, it was a question of survival. They needed more than words. They needed action. Traoré delivered. The Future Builders program wasn't a vague gesture. It was a detailed initiative aimed at turning returnees into skilled contributors. The government embedded these newly repatriated citizens into major national projects, like upgrading the nation's crumbling infrastructure. Roads and bridges that connected rural villages to bustling urban centers became priority projects. Schools were built in underserved regions, and hospitals were refurbished to expand access to healthcare. Each project wasn't just about laying bricks or pouring concrete. It served as a platform for returnees to utilize whatever skills they had developed during their time abroad or to learn entirely new ones. Take Aminata, for example. She had studied engineering in the United States before her deportation left her stranded between two identities. Through the program, she became instrumental in constructing a bridge that brought rural farmers closer to city markets and healthcare facilities. The bridge wasn't just a route for easier access, it became a lifeline for isolated communities. Aminata's story wasn't unique. Whether it was in farming, construction, or teaching, the returnees were finding ways to apply their skills and reshape their homeland. Behind these efforts was Traoré's firm belief that resources alone wouldn't create change. People would. His government invested heavily in the program, allocating funds for tools, training, and mentorship. These weren't token efforts to tide people over. The program provided returnees with sustainable opportunities, giving them a sense of purpose and, crucially, the ability to see the results of their work. From the tangible improvements in infrastructure to the reinvigoration of local industries, the impact was becoming visible. Traoré also studied what had worked in other nations facing similar challenges. In countries where deported citizens were reintegrated effectively, initiatives focused on training and economic independence fostered both individual success and long-term national benefits. Taking cues from such efforts, the program paired large-scale national projects with education reforms, ensuring that the contributions of returnees would leave a broader, lasting imprint on the entire population. Still, challenges persisted. Some sectors saw pushback from entrenched interests threatened by Traoré's vision. Officials accustomed to the old ways of corruption fought to derail progress, creating occasional roadblocks. But Traoré's resolve remained strong. By directly involving communities, he ensured accountability. The citizens themselves became watchdogs, invested in the program's success, and unwilling to see it undermined. The initial progress was striking. Primary schools, once overcrowded and crumbling, now boasted new classrooms, allowing more children to attend. Farmlands that previously sat neglected due to poor irrigation transformed into productive, thriving fields. Repatriates began to see their labor not as a struggle, but as a sign of their ability to change the narrative. Just a year prior, many feared they couldn't belong anywhere. Now their work was carving out spaces for both themselves and future generations. But for all these early successes, one question lingered. Could this momentum last? Could these individuals carrying so much personal trauma fully embrace their roles in shaping the country's future? And perhaps more importantly, could society itself continue to see them not as burdens, but as indispensable builders of the nation? These questions hung in the air like unfinished work waiting to be answered. And in the hearts and minds of the repatriates, the challenge of not just rebuilding but truly belonging was only beginning. How do you rebuild your identity when you feel like a stranger in the land of your birth? For many of the repatriated citizens, this was the unrelenting question. After spending so many years in the United States adapting to its culture, routines, and norms, stepping back onto Burkinabe soil felt strangely foreign. Their accents were different. Their manners were different. Even the way they approached problems or communicated was shaped by years of living in another world. For some, this led to an overwhelming feeling of being caught between places, rooted in neither. Navigating everyday life became an obstacle course. Simple tasks like buying groceries, speaking the local dialect fluently, or even understanding unspoken social expectations turned into moments of awkwardness and frustration. Many returnees felt eyes on them whenever they walked through a marketplace or applied for work. Were they noticed because they stood out, or had their reputation preceded them? This doubt lingered constantly, carving away at their confidence. Some stayed quiet, afraid of being judged for their differences. Others grew resentful, unsure of why they were treated as if they didn't belong. For members of local communities, skepticism wasn't always rooted in malice, but it was present nonetheless. Some questioned whether these returnees, who seemed more American than Burkinabe, could really reintegrate. Others viewed them as living reminders of perceived failure, a statement that their pursuit of a better life abroad hadn't worked out. This fostered tension between deportees and locals, leaving the former isolated and struggling to prove their potential. It was precisely this societal divide that Ibrahim Traoré sought to close. From the start, his mission was clear. The returning citizens weren't to be seen as burdens. They were assets. In speeches carried live on national television, he reminded the public that these individuals had acquired skills and experiences abroad that could be used to improve Burkina Faso. They are the future of our nation, he declared, encouraging communities to see beyond the stigma. Publicly welcoming them at the airport was more than a humane gesture. It was a symbol of his commitment to change the narrative. Traore didn't just ask for acceptance. He created tangible opportunities for the returnees to demonstrate their worth. Many of these citizens had developed trades or expertise in the United States, and now, through the Future Builders program, they were applying those skills. In education, former tutors and teaching assistants began training local instructors, introducing practical teaching methods they had picked up overseas. In technology, returnees implemented software systems that improved efficiency in government offices and local businesses. And in infrastructure, engineers like Aminata worked on community projects, such as constructing bridges to connect neighborhoods and increase accessibility for rural populations. It wasn't just a matter of technical skills, though. These returnees brought fresh perspectives. Having lived in a highly interconnected society, they introduced new ways of organizing communities, managing resources, and approaching development challenges. For instance, one group of returnees initiated a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs, blending traditional business practices with lessons from their time abroad. Their efforts weren't just solutions to practical problems, they also became symbols of what collaboration could achieve. Personal success stories began to shift the public's perception. Aminata, once seen as an outsider, became a respected figure after her engineering contributions directly impacted local livelihoods. Another returnee turned a neglected plot of land into a thriving agricultural cooperative, employing dozens of locals and increasing food production for nearby communities. As more of these examples emerged, the skepticism began to ebb. People no longer saw the returnees as failures shipped back against their will. They started seeing them as a resource, a group of individuals who had faced significant challenges but still had the resilience to contribute. This transformation wasn't just personal, it resonated across Burkina Faso. Traore's vision opened up a broader conversation. What does it mean to belong? For decades, national identity had leaned heavily on tradition. But now these returnees introduced a new kind of resilience, one that didn't reject the past but weaved it together with fresh ideas and perspectives from abroad. Slowly but surely, locals began to embrace the deportees as part of the collective Burkinabe identity. Despite these successes, lasting change was far from guaranteed. Would the new sense of belonging sustain itself as challenges tested the fledgling progress? Would these returnees truly shed their outsider label to become leaders? The answers weren't clear, but the shift in perception was undeniable. They were no longer just deported citizens. They were becoming leaders of change, carrying the hopes of a nation looking toward its future. But this was only the beginning. What came next would determine whether Burkina Faso's transformation was only a fleeting moment or the dawn of a new era. Under Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, Burkina Faso has turned a story of deportation into one of purpose. These citizens, once shackled and cast off as failures, are now critical parts of a nation finding its strength. Their journey underscores a broader truth. The resilience of a people and the vision of a leader can rewrite the narrative of an entire country. This transformation raises a vital question. What if the world shifted its perspective on deportation? Instead of seeing it as an end, could it be a beginning? Burkina Faso's future is unfolding, and its people are proving they hold the pen.